Alright everybody, so I'm working on the 76 Jeep J10, and I'm just changing the oil. When I first got the thing, clearly I changed the oil, the diff fluid, the transmission fluid, dropping the pan, all of that stuff, but I did not take off the valve covers to check out the lifters and all that stuff, and I did not take off the oil pan as well. When I drained the oil in the thing, it did drain. It drained like normal oil. It was just really dark and really black. So I didn't think anything of it. When I got the engine running on one of my prior videos, oil pressure was really good. It was like 40 psi idle, I think it was, and it was like 50 or 60 driving, somewhere around there. It was really high. However, I have noticed, and I have only driven this thing about 1,500 miles. It's been a year, but it's only been 1,500 miles. Partially because it just has farm tags. I can't really drive on the interstate or anything like that. But from here to town is 15 miles, and you drive 60 miles an hour, so it's kind of like the interstate. So, but anyway, so I've noticed the oil pressure is really low on this thing. This summer, the oil pressure, when it was hot and I was having issues with the radiator and the truck overheating, the oil pressure would drop down to like 0 when it's at idle at like a red light. And then when I drive off, if I'm cruising at like maybe 20, 30 miles an hour, oil pressure was only like 20 psi. When I drove 60 miles an hour, oil pressure would only get to about 35. That's a lot lower than what I remember. I don't remember the exact numbers. I'm just throwing 50 or 60 out there, but I know it was above 40, especially driving at 60 miles an hour. So the oil pressure has dropped on this thing, and I'm not exactly sure why. The engine sounds good. There's no ticking. There's no knocking. Nothing like that. So I'm like, well, I have a suspicion this thing probably never had an oil change in a long time besides when I changed it when I got it. I have a sneaky suspicion, even though it was sitting in the field for 20 years, it was driven on and off. You know, clearly there were new brake lines, new exhaust. So it was technically not sitting for 20 years, but technically it was. It wasn't really being used. And I have a feeling in those 24 years, the oil was probably never changed. And the reason why I suspect that is because, one, the drain bolt I could not get off. It just spun and spun and spun. And the owner had an oil pan underneath the truck. And I asked him, were you changing the oil? And he made some whatever bullshit excuse. And yeah, so he probably stripped the bolt, couldn't get it off, never changed the oil in decades. I got it off by taking a small screwdriver, you know, prying it under the plug and kind of prying on it as you're loosening it, and then it just came out. Thankfully, the plug itself was bad, not the oil pan threads, so a new plug worked, filled it up, drove it 1,500 miles, and that's where I'm at right now with the low oil pressure. So I got a new filter, new oil, 1040 oil, and let me show you something. So just keep blabbering out. Need to get my screwdriver real quick. All right. So there's the oil pan. As I was taking the bolt off, let me show you guys this. Now, mind you, it is full on the dipstick. Huh. No oil is coming out. And what in the F is that? Holy crap. So it looks like I got major sludge on this thing. But it looks like silvery stuff. So that's no good. So I'm hoping there's nothing major wrong with this thing, because if that's the case, I'll probably sell this truck. I don't want to deal with engine problems. So let's stick this screwdriver in here and see if we can get this oil out. Oh yeah, that is nasty. that is horrible. What in the F? There we go. Look how thick that is. That is like thick, thick sludge. It's not silver anymore. I think the silvery stuff is just the stuff that couldn't get to the oil filter. Whatever sat in the pan for decades. Like I said, I don't hear any weird noises or anything, but oh, it's starting to overfill. Don't you hate when you get leaves in this thing and it doesn't go down inside the pan anymore? Oh, what a mess. Oh boy. Look at that shit coming out of there. So, the oil pan has to come off, and I need to look. That's not something I really wanted to do right now, though. That is the worst oil I have ever seen in my life. And again, I changed this oil 1,500 miles ago. So this engine is extremely sludged up. Extremely sludged up. 1,500 miles and the oil changes into that. So I have two choices here: to take the oil pan off or fill it up with oil again, run it, except only run it for maybe a couple hundred miles, change the oil again, run it, change the oil again, and repeat all of that. Or take the pan off. The best bet is probably to take the pan off, but I really hate taking oil pans off, and I'm just kind of being lazy right now, so I'm probably going to fill this back up and run it maybe with some like engine flush or something like that, and then just keep repeating that process. The Wagoneer was this kind of the same thing. It was not nearly as bad as this, but when I got it, I took the oil pan off after a few months, and there was so much sludge on the bottom of the oil pan. I mean, I could pick it up like, what do you call it? It was like yogurt, like thick yogurt. And I took the valve covers off, and the same thing. There was just like thick yogurt sludge all over, and I don't know why I keep getting the Jeeps that people just don't take care of. You know, this is when you don't change your goddamn oil, and other people have to deal with this shit. So, I don't like that silvery look right there either, so, and it's still draining. That's how thick it is. So, I have to make a decision to fill it up and then drive it for a while and then change it again, or take the pan off. I know the best thing to do is to probably take the pan off, but oh boy, I guess I'll update you guys on what I do, but this is really bad. Hopefully when I take the, when I refill it, I'm probably going to refill it and then run it for a little bit, just to make sure that the oil pressure is still good, because I don't want to bother dropping the pan if the whole thing is just screwed up. I don't even know what I'm talking about right now. I'm kind of pissed, actually. Ugh. So I'm going to let that drain for a little bit. I'm going to take the oil filter off, replace the oil filter, and then make the decision if I'm going to fill it back up or not. But I probably will fill it back up, because I am curious if the oil pressure is going to go back to where it was. Because like I said, it does sound fine. It sounds great. There's no noises. There's no ticking. My 90 Grand Wagon here actually is the one that makes the noises. So this engine is actually really quiet. Ugh. That's what happens when you can't push on your knees with your dirty hands. So, yeah, I'll let you guys go. But just a reminder, please change your freaking oil in your cars. This is the second full-size Jeep that I have had to deal with people not changing oil. And I just had to do that to my lawn tractor, which probably needs a new transmission, actually. So this little LTX 1050 Cub Cadet, it's a really good mower. It's definitely older. Got it from one of the neighbors. Had only about 140 hours on it. And it's been fine for a year. But the hydrostatic transmission in it is moaning really, really badly. It won't go up hills anymore. It drives fine and it mows fine on flat land, but I can't go up hills anymore. So I just changed the fluid in there, which is basically just 20-50 weight oil, and it was thick and solid black, just like you saw on the engine, actually. So that's what happens when people don't change the fluids on their vehicles, and unfortunately I didn't think to do that when I bought the damn thing. So sorry for huffing and puffing. It's just been a really long day today, and it's not even, what is it, not even 1 o'clock yet. So yeah, I think I'm going to fill it back up, turn it on, see how it runs, if the oil pressure comes back or not, and then I guess I'll drive it for a couple 100 miles and then drain it, repeat the process probably, but eventually I do have to take off these valve covers and the oil pan and clean up the oil pan. I'm sure the pickup tube is probably gross. The Wagoneer's pickup tube was 80% blocked with the actual cork gasket. The cork gasket broke and blocked 80% of the pickup tube. So, actually, I do have a really cool thing like that I can do, is I will charge my little mechanic stethoscope and I will stick it in the oil pan just to look at the actual pan itself to see how bad it looks like on the inside, and then I'll make the decision of refilling it. But oil right now is still cheap, $16 for a quart or 5 quarts. So again, I'm repeating myself. I'll probably just fill it up because I do want to see if the oil pressure goes back to normal. I did have a sneaky suspicion that this thing was clogged up and gummed up, and the oil filter was probably clogged up, and that's the reason why the oil pressure has dropped. But I'm crossing my fingers that the oil pressure goes back up with fresh oil. So anyway, thanks for watching, everybody. Sorry for putting up with my heavy breathing. I'm just out of shape, and yeah, and I'm kind of pissed off right now. So, and again, it's really weird. When I changed the oil, when I first got the Jeep, before I even drove it, I changed the oil. It just drained out fine. There was no sludge. Now I changed the oil and it's just sludge everywhere. So I'm guessing that clean oil that I put in probably did a decent job of cleaning the engine up, but it was so clogged up and so sludgy that it too turned into sludge. But I don't like that silvery stuff. That silvery stuff, that's no good. So let me let you guys go. Thanks for watching.